Hey friend, Graham here from the recordingrevolution.com, and welcome back to the Mixing with EQ video series. We've looked at a lot of helpful things about what an EQ is and how to best use it and approach it in your mix to maximize headroom and clarity. But one thing I really want to share with you in this series that I couldn't skip over is one of the most helpful ways to make sure that your EQ moves are actually helping your mix. Because you can cut and you can boost all day long and you can do what you think is best for the track and you can bypass the plugin and say, yeah, that's helping, or no, that's not helping. But until you do this one thing, you don't actually know for sure if you are helping or hurting the track or the mix. And that simple thing is, my friend, level matching. Level matching is one of the most helpful and powerful things you can do with any plugin, especially with EQ, and yet so often mixers skip this step. I know I did, so I'm speaking from experience. If you look at most EQs, there is a output knob. In fact, most plugins have some kind of gain, makeup gain, or output knob. This is helpful for a couple reasons, and the main reason is you want to make sure that signal that comes into your plugin goes out of your plugin at the same volume. Why is that important, you ask? Well, because we fool ourselves with volume. It's hard to admit, but we are suckers for things that are louder, okay? So if you bring in a plugin and you do some boosts and some cuts, and in the end, the plugin makes your track louder because of the boosts, when you turn that plugin on, you're going to think, yes, this is making my track sound better because it sounds a little bit louder to you. It sounds more exciting. You hear it better in the mix. Of course you like it better. It's louder. What's wrong with that, Graham? Well, in some ways, nothing. In a lot of ways, everything. Because if you apply that mindset and philosophy to every track, all you're going to do, my friend, is turn everything up. And then you're going to have headroom problems, when in reality, you could have just turned everything up with one little move at the master fader or one simple EQ move in the end. That's not what we want to do with EQ. We want to carve and sculpt and adjust the tone of a track subtly so that it's actually enhancing the track and helping it sit in the mix better. And the only way to know for sure if that's working is to give a fair comparison. And so my goal for you is, when you make EQ moves, do something at the end. That is level match. So look at this example. This is the organ we looked at in the last video. By itself, this is what it sounds like. And here's what it sounds like when I kick on the EQ. Okay, it sounds about the same volume, just different, thinner and a little more grittier in the mid-range, and we showed you why in the last video. But notice the output knob, my friend. It says minus 2.7 dB, so it's almost a 3 dB volume decrease after the plugin. I've turned everything down by almost 3 dB. That's because if I leave this where it's set at default, here is what the EQ is actually doing to the track. You can see that the output meter, the bottom one here, is louder than the input meter. Okay, yeah, I've cut out a lot of low end, but that 6 dB boost at 2.5K is making, in the end, my organ track a little bit louder than it really was coming into the plugin. And that's a problem because I might fool myself into thinking that I can hear the organ better when I've really just turned it up. And I want to make sure for a fact that this is the right frequency that's helping, and it's not just a volume increase that's helping, okay? So what I like to do is look for the input and output meters, and then I dial the output knob up or down accordingly to make sure they match. Okay, so that's all I did. The 2.7 dB trimmed down, the number is irrelevant. What I did is just visually match. Let's take a look. It's not perfect because it depends on which frequency is happening at the time, but it looks like minus 2.8 and maybe minus 2.7 where I had it before is the right cut. It's saying that when this is turned down, now the track that you hear in the mix is the same volume after all the EQ processing that the track was before the EQ. And now we can have a helpful judge when we bypass this in or out in the mix. So I'll put this not in solo, pan this back to the right where it was, take a listen to the right here, and listen for the organ, and I'll bypass it and turn it on or off. Hard to hear for sure, but my ear, since I know where it is, I can pick out the organ better with the EQ on, and I know that it's not because I'm making it louder, it's because I'm hitting the right frequencies. Let's look at another example where I actually boosted the volume on a track after the EQ processing, and that is my acoustic guitar, okay? In this case, I've done 2 cuts, 1 boost on the EQ, but if you look at the output knob, the exact opposite has happened here. By a random circumstance, it's a boost of 2.7 dB. I don't know why it's the exact same amount, it just happened to be what it was. Take a listen to the acoustic by itself with no EQ. That's recorded with an SM57, by the way. I thought that was interesting. Sounded better in the mix than my nice condensers. And then here's what it sounds like after the EQ. Okay, this is a very drastic cut because there's so much beef and low end in that acoustic guitar. It's a Martin and has a lot of roundness to it. That's not needed in this mix, and it gets lost in the soupy, distorted electric guitars. I needed this acoustic to be a texture piece, which more often than not acoustics are these days. So I really need it to be more mid-rangey. So you can see the roll off as well as the cut here at 3 and some change. And then I have a boost at 1.3K, which is where it really cut through nicely. But it's way more cutting than boosting. So I've really made the track quieter. If you take away this output knob adjustment, then you can hear what's happening when I turn on the EQ. You can see it too. It's much quieter. I don't want to make my track quieter by cutting. I just want to change the tone of it. So I do the cuts, I do the boosts, I make it sound better, but I need to make up that gain because I really want this to be a level neutral decision. Okay, remember, EQ is not a volume thing as much as it's a smart volume thing. And that's what I want to change, is not the overall volume of the track. That's what a fader is for. I want to change the volume of specific frequencies. So after my correct boosts and cuts, I just decided to match the volume here. And in that case, 2.7 made it work. So now when I listen to it in context of the mix and I bypass the EQ, I know that the acoustic is the same volume in and out. And I can just tell now, is it really helping or hurting? Right, it pokes through a little bit more because that texture is there and all that headroom is cleared up. And you remember, when you cut things, if you remember the subtractive EQ video, it's the same effect as increasing the apparent volume of the other frequencies, especially when you do an output up now. So now we've freed up the acoustic to really display the upper frequencies better instead of the lower ones that aren't its strength in this song. So my friend, the key for you today is when you do any EQ moves, I want you to go ahead and EQ to town. Do the 3 dB, 6 dB chunks as we talked about. But when you've got things sounding better and it's sitting where you want it tonally wise and it sounds like it fits the mix better, do a final sweep and make sure that your output matches your input and adjust accordingly so that when you bypass the plugin, you can decide without a shadow of a doubt, is it helping or hurting without volume being a deceptive factor. That's it for today's video. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through how to carve EQ holes. Very, very helpful to avoid masking and frequency overlap. But for today, just leave a comment below the video and let me know, do you level match every time you EQ? It's okay if you don't, because Graham did not for a long, long time. But let me know if you do or if you don't, and let me know why below this video. As always, subscribe to the videos if you enjoy them. I will see you on the next video real soon.